Ever since E3, there have been a number of rumors flying around about several Bethesda games. As rumors are inherently made up of assumptions, I won't discuss those. Instead, I will focus on a variety of interviews with Todd Howard that have been published since E3. Shortly after the E3 showcase, there were two interviews published by the Telegraph, so let's dive into the details of the first article. When asked about Starfield, Todd Howard stated that it's very much a next-gen game that will only be playable on high-end PCs and the new Xbox Series X and S consoles. By focusing on those platforms, you really get to lean in a lot on making it the best it can be for those systems. The hardware definitely helps us do a lot of things with loading and fidelity. But graphics fidelity is graphics fidelity. I don't want to come across as like the graphics fidelity is a barrier. Do you know what I mean? Todd continued, "It's really about focus. That's what I would say. It's nice to put the bar high, obviously, but it's really good to be able to focus and say, this is what we're creating, and here's the bar. Oftentimes, that is governed by just the timing of where you're at and where the hardware is at. We're really fortunate that we get to set the bar really, really high." So what is Todd talking about here? Well, first, he confirmed what we already know, which is that Starfield is a PC and Xbox exclusive game. He then went into one of the things that they have been focused on, graphics fidelity. But what does that mean? Well, graphical fidelity is the combination of detail, resolution, and frame rate. As we know, and as Todd also stated, those are things that have been a barrier for previous titles. Based on Todd's statement on setting the bar really high, we can infer that that means Starfield is going to be a graphical beast. The Telegraph continued by asking about the Microsoft acquisition. Todd said, "Well, the good news is we've worked together with Microsoft for so long. Going back since Morrowind, every game I've done, we've had a pretty deep partnership and developed technology together and other things. We gave a lot of thought to where we wanted to end up, and we talked to Microsoft for a long time about potentially doing something like that. And so, it's been great. Their support for what we want to do, their support for all the game creators. We love their platforms and really the people there. We have a lot of deep friendships, and at the end of the day, I think it's going to allow us to make the best stuff we ever have." So Todd did not say anything we didn't already know. The relationship between Microsoft and Bethesda has always been great. This will continue long into the future. Next, the Telegraph asked if Todd had any reservations about being forced to pick a side as it related to Xbox and PlayStation. Todd said, "Pick a side, meaning PlayStation? Is that what you mean?" Well, a little bit. You don't ever want to leave people out, right? But at the end of the day, your ability to focus and say, this is the game I want to make, these are the platforms I want to make it on, and being able to really lean in on those is going to make for a better product. And we're big believers in all the avenues that Xbox and Microsoft are doing to get games to more people. Whether that's the integration with PC, which is huge for us, the cloud streaming, and all those things. So I think it's about taking a long-term view. And our belief is that those things are really fundamentally good. So we see it actually opening up more and more so that people's ability to play our games via Game Pass and other things, their ability to play our games doesn't go down. It goes up dramatically. And I can say that I'm proud to be part of Xbox. I think it's great for the community of gamers. This was a bit telling, even though Todd was a bit disappointed with not being able to include PlayStation. He ended up looking at the bright side. This meant being able to focus more on the game as a whole. He really seems to believe in the philosophy that Xbox has for gamers. Todd Howard also revealed some of the challenges of developing a AAA blockbuster during a global pandemic. Bethesda has been actively working on Starfield for over 8 years now, but the unique circumstances of the last 18 months require the dev teams spread across 4 locations in Maryland, Montreal, and Texas to adapt to remote working. Todd said, "We went from 4 locations to 400 locations. A build of a game can be a lot of data, and so we've had to do some new engineering around how the game is given to people. There's been some really cool work some parts of our company have done to let people stream the game and someone else control it. I think it's naive to say we'll just go back to the way it was because there are positives that came out of working like this as well. I think we're actually quite lucky that more people went to video games during the pandemic. It made you remember how important the work is to people. I found that really rewarding. Creating this kind of entertainment for people, it gave you a good sense of purpose. We're very, very lucky compared to most people to be able to do this." This interview really focused on Starfield and how Bethesda was able to adapt to the acquisition and the pandemic. With regards to the pandemic, it seems as though Bethesda, like all game developers, had to really make some significant changes to continue to make the games we all love. The second interview on the same day by the Telegraph also heavily focused on Starfield, so let's dive into it. Talking about the Starfield teaser, there are a lot of blink and you'll miss them incidental details in the clip. Todd was asked if this was deliberate or to get people guessing about what is going on. Todd said, "Well, yes, it's 2 things. One is to show you that even though this is a game set in space, it still has a lot of lived-in character and things you would expect from our games. We like all this stuff. We start with the world and questions like, what do they eat? What do they write with? How do they order their books? If you look at the world around us, people think landscapes, and there's a lot of landscape in Starfield. But if you walk into a place where there's stuff everywhere, we sweat the details there. We want to know what all the buttons do. We model all the buttons. We spent a lot of time on the cheese sandwich, getting the right sheen on a piece of space cheese. We like that stuff. We geek out on it. Every button, I think, is labeled on the ship. It's nice to see this level of detail going into the game. I would love for this level of detail in a Fallout game. It makes me hopeful for the future of Bethesda games." Moving on to the next question, Todd was asked, "Who are we? Where are we? And what is Constellation?" Todd answered, "Well, the game is set about 300 plus years in our own future, and Constellation is kind of the last group of space explorers. It's like NASA meets Indiana Jones meets the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, a group of people that are still searching for answers. There are a lot of factions in the game, but that's the main one you'll become part of. It's kind of like Skyrim in terms of structure of the game. Where you're going to be, who you want to be, and then there's different factions that you can join and really carve your own path. So we have one story that we're telling, and then we have a lot of other ones like we love to do. And our hope is that each player feels like they can say, here's who I want to be in this universe, and then we're giving them an outlet to express that. So here it sounds like a Bethesda game. We're going to have a main story with side quests, and we'll be able to make choices along the way to determine the outcome of our playthrough. Next, Todd was asked about the plot mentioned in the teaser. What you have found is the key to unlocking everything. What have we found, and what are we unlocking? Todd said, I can't tell you. But we ask some big questions in the game. The kind that people have asked when they look to the sky, you know? What's out there? Why are we here? How do we get here? And we get into the science. We get into the religion. I really enjoy thinking about those big questions. I see them in other forms of entertainment, and I think we have a unique way of presenting it within a game like this, where maybe we don't have all the answers, but I think it's good to get people thinking. No surprise here that Todd gave no details. After all, that would have spoiled the plot. It's nice to have a bit of mystery. Not knowing this is better for all of us, as we will be able to enjoy the game without knowing what is coming in the story. Todd was asked about the blueprint alien structure stuck on the wall. Does that allude to some sort of base building or settlement functionality? And what is it? Todd answered, I don't want to interpret that as a blueprint. I wouldn't say that's a blueprint. That's part of the mystery, and people will freeze frame that and start speculating. Again, not surprising that Todd would be a bit cagey here. This is probably another big part of the story. The interviewer moved on to ask about the ladder, asking if it means we will be able to climb things. Todd said, well, climbing is not... Don't read too much into the ladder. It's a ladder to get you in and out of the spaceship. That's about it. We may have to clarify that. Exciting video game features, they're a pain in the ass. So as far as climbing ladders, I wouldn't expect anything major. The interviewer then asked about the books seen on the shelf about author and explorer Joshua Slocum having disappeared while sailing aboard his boat in 1909, never to be seen again. Is that a big hint at Starfield's narrative? Todd answered, that is true. I don't know how big it is, but good catch. It all has relevance. I'll just say that. Again, no info here, so moving on to the next question. Referring to the end scene, with the astronaut inputting the coordinates 11-11-22 into the ship's computer, which happens to be the release date for Starfield. Is there more significance to that number? Todd replied, for the trailer, that is one that's breaking the fourth wall. That is here to reveal the release date. It does not have any in-world meaning, I can tell you that. So in short, it was just put in to announce the release date. Moving on to the next question, are there any other big details you'd like to draw fans' attention to? Todd said, not that I want to call attention to. There are smaller ones. They will find them, though, eventually. Eventually meaning probably in a few hours when you can stop every frame and look at it in 4K. There's a lot there. Todd also spoke about the fan-fueled rumors and speculation. There's enough stuff out there. People are going to get some things right. There's a lot more wrong, but that's okay. It's good. I just love that he touched on the rumors here. Todd and I think alike in this regard. He said there are some things right, but a lot more that's wrong. That's why I don't subscribe to rumors. The next interview took place the next day on 6/14/21. So let's get into it. Speaking about Starfield again, Todd was asked, what do you do in the game? Todd answered, well, it's coming out next year, so there'll be a lot of time to show actual gameplay, and we'll do that closer to release like we usually do. But I will say this, it is a first-person and third-person game like our other ones. We like that style of gameplay. First-person for us is still our prime way of playing, so you can see the world and touch all of the things. We get more info here, learning that Starfield can be played in both first and third-person view. The next question was about how Todd had previously spoken about Starfield being infused with Bethesda Game Studios' DNA. What does that mean to him, and how has it informed this game specifically? Todd said, well, we like to put you in a world where we're not dragging you by the nose and saying you must do X, Y, and Z, and that it's okay if you want to test the game's boundaries. You know, can I read this book? Can I pick this up? Can I do this? What if I do this? What if I do this? And the game is saying yes a lot, and it has large-scale goals and storytelling, but that minute-to-minute feels rewarding for you. And if you want to pass the time and go watch the sunset and pick flowers, it's rewarding in that way too. The quiet moments feel really, really good. Again, this gives me a good feeling as Bethesda seems to be going back to their roots here. The next segment revolves around the tone and theme of the game. Todd says, "This isn't Star Wars or Star Trek. It's kind of its own thing, and I think as we show more, hopefully, it'll carve out its own niche. It's still a game, but it does like to give you the sense of, I buy the reality of it, right? So if you look at the ship, you can probably design a much sleeker ship 300 years in the future, right? But this has touchstones back to the current space program, so in your mind, you can draw this line between them. Like there's various guns the player has and other weapons and things like that. But more exotic ones feel exotic in the reality of the game versus not. To be fair, it does seem to not quite fit into any known sci-fi franchise. When doing research for this game, Todd Howard spoke to Elon Musk because he wanted to talk to people who could see further than what he was seeing right now. Todd goes on to say, "It's being able to play with something where the technology level and logic of how humankind got to where they are. You know, how do people live? How does the equipment work? What are the rules of communication? You take it for granted in the game that you could communicate from one planet to another or some other remote thing. But we have the rules. No, they can't. That's going to take years. And then once you realize, you can be like, okay. You can use that to your advantage." This statement is very interesting to me. This seems to indicate that communication may be more difficult than we think, and at the same time, it seems that we are not going to be limited to just our solar system. I say this because even with current technology, it does not take years to communicate with craft sent to other planets in the solar system. Even with the furthest craft, that being the Voyager space probes, it only takes about 21 hours to communicate with them. The interviewer said, "Realistic sci-fi at last. No more lasers in a vacuum." To which Todd replied, I think you might see some lasers in a vacuum. It is a game, let's make no mistake. But when you build those things, you can then lean on them, and they create their own vibe. There's a case in the trailer. It's a watch case, actually. You're part of Constellation, so you get this explorer's watch. And it's part of the identity of, how does this thing work? What does it do? What does it not do? Tone. A lot of it is tone. Referring to previous games being relatively self-contained, the interviewer says that the universe, by nature, is infinite. Todd quickly responds, "Not necessarily. I don't want to set any crazy expectations for that. We have cities, and we've built them like we built cities we've built before. And we have lots of locations that we're building like we've built before. And we want that experience of you exploring those to be, as rewarding as we've done before. There are some different spins on that given the subject matter, but we like that about the games. We want to point in a direction and walk and have our curiosity piqued and hopefully rewarded." Todd continued, "It's very big, yeah. People are still playing Skyrim, and we learned from that. We spent more time building Starfield to be played for a long time, if you so choose that you want to keep playing it. It's got more hooks in it for that that we added later to a game like Skyrim, while still making sure that somebody else who just wants to play through the main quest and win, or feel they've accomplished something large, that's doable. It is clear that the game is going to be big. How big remains to be seen. That said, Starfield's teaser declares this game to be 25 years in the making. This is more than a marketing ploy. Todd Howard wanted to make a full-on sci-fi game since falling in love with Games Workshop pen and paper RPG Traveler as a teenager. In fact, one of the first games he started writing was a version of Traveler on his Apple II home computer. Later, he would realize this dream before the plug was pulled on the project. This, of course, is a reference to the unreleased 10th Planet. Todd was asked if he still feels nervous revealing a new game for the first time. Todd replied, "That's a great question. Yeah, the old nerves start. It's one thing when you're working on it. Yeah, there's some problems, but you're kind of like, well, we'll deal with that later. We'll get it there. But when you're putting something out there, even like this teaser trailer, and it's new, it's not a sequel to something we've done, there's still this question. How are people going to react? Though I would summarize by saying, we're really excited to put something out there that people can at least start getting a sense of. That's what this game looks like and feels like." Finally, there was one more interview that was done. This short interview took place on 6/29/21 with the Telegraph. As the previous interviews focused on Starfield, this one focused on two other games, The Elder Scrolls 6 and Indiana Jones. So let's see what was said. The Elder Scrolls 6 was first revealed alongside Starfield at E3 2018. Todd Howard confirmed that it was intended to assure fans that the studio was still committed to single-player games in the wake of Fallout 76. Todd said that the new Starfield technology, Creation Engine 2, is sort of built for both. It's like a new tech base. The vast majority of our development work is on Starfield right now, but everyone works on everything, so the projects kind of intertwine. It's good to think of the Elder Scrolls 6 as still being in a design phase, but we're checking the tech. Is it going to handle the things we want to do in that game? Every game will have some new suites of technology, so Elder Scrolls 6 will have some additions to the Creation Engine 2 that the game is going to require. This statement is very telling. What it means is that the Elder Scrolls 6 is being worked on, but we don't know yet how far along that work is. While we can speculate till the cows come home, I think it is best to wait and see what comes between now and the official release of Starfield. At this point, it is safe to say that we won't see the Elder Scrolls 6 till after Starfield is complete. That said, Bethesda has been known to surprise us from time to time, so fingers crossed. The next segment brings us to Indiana Jones. Todd was much more elusive about this title currently being developed by Machine Games. Here is what Todd discussed. Todd said, "I'm super excited. I think I originally pitched to George Lucas in 2009, and I've been trying to find a way to make that sense. And I think the work Machine Games have done, they're just phenomenal developers and storytellers. And when I started talking to them about it, it was a good fit. And we got the opportunity to talk to Lucas and Disney about it, and they were super excited. I really like Indiana Jones, but I never thought I'd have the opportunity to make a game. And you'll hear more about that in the future. But the team at Machine Games are the best team in the world to pull this game off, and they're doing a phenomenal job." Well, there you have it. As it relates to Indiana Jones, I think we may see a full-on series based on the movies. Call me crazy, but that is just the feeling I get with this. Given that Machine Games is the team behind Wolfenstein, they already have the tools and talent to make a game like this work. They don't have to reinvent the wheel, just fine-tune it to make a very enjoyable game. I know many of you have seen other creators having talked about all this, and I hope that this video helps clear up some things. That said, if you enjoyed this video, consider giving it a like and subscribe for more content. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, I'm just glad you stopped by, and I'll see you in the next one.